Salam alaikum. Your Royal Highness, Prince Turki Al Faisal, Your Excellency, Ambassador Ludovic Brie, King Faisal Center Secretary General, Mr. Turki Ashwer, esteemed colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening to everyone. King Faisal Center for Research in Islamic Studies, in conjunction with the French Embassy in Saudi Arabia, is delighted to welcome you to our lecture this evening, The Revival of Islamic Studies in Europe, Contemporary Trends, by Dr. Cédric Beylock, an anthropologist and lecturer at the Institut Catholique de Paris, and an associate researcher at the Laboratoire Les Afriques dans le Monde, Sciences Po, Bordeaux. Dr. Cédric Beylock holds a PhD in anthropology from the University of Bordeaux. He has been an advisor at the French Ministry of Interior's Central Office for Relations with Religion and at the MENA Department of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His major areas of research range from Islam in France and Morocco, religious authority in Islam, contemporary Islamic thought, Islamist movements, and Muslim youth. Now, Islamic studies in Europe is usually seen as being in decline, but this evening, Dr. Beylock will show us that this is incorrect. A combination of new approaches to Islamic history and textual tradition, as well as more generous funding policies, have allowed new research projects and related publications to emerge in recent years. Hence, this evening's lecture offers an overview of the dynamics and contemporary trends in Islamic studies in Europe. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Beylock to give his lecture, and we will be taking questions following the lecture. And at this point, I would like to please ask you to please switch off your mobile phones or put them on silent. So Dr. Beylock, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for this presentation. وشكرا جزيلا على هذه الدعوة الكريمة to the King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies, His Secretary General Turki Al-Shuwair, His Excellency Ludovic Brie, His Excellency, and the Prince, of course. Thank you very much, everybody, to be there. Thank you very much to the audience. And then I'm going to get to the floor. There it is. The program you will see here right now looks like a little bit heavy, but actually the intention of this talk is just to draw a short panorama of recent research in Islamic studies in Europe, and why not to contribute to establish a bridge between European research in Islamic studies and King Faisal Center for future collaboration. يعني في الحقيقة لست مختصا ولكن أريد أن أكون جسرا بين الأبحاث الإسلامية بأوروبا والعقل المعرفي السعودي. And now let me completely shift into English because otherwise it will take us a long time. So I will thus present research programs or academics or institution, not a deep insight into one particular research project, nor debate on epistemological or methodological questions on contemporary studies. So this presentation is what a research ingénieur de recherche would do in ingénieur de recherche, as we say in French, will do, rather than the lecture of a specialist in codicology or linguistics, semiotics, hermeneutics, archaeology, late medieval history, Arabic literature, etc. All the specific disciplines involved in contemporary Islamic studies. So we would rather like here to offer the audience of the King Faisal Center an overview of the latest research project in the field, in that field in Europe, and then the center could possibly pick up an academic to invite or a research program to present. So let's get to the other. No, right now the other way around. There it is. Okay. Just a little introduction. You know, Henri Laouste, probably this name, from France, Joseph Schacht, Theodor Nodelke from Germany, Christian Snoek-Groene from the Netherlands, Ignaz Godzier from Hungary. Those are famous names associated with what is usually perceived as a glorious era of Islamic studies in Europe. The field has then been usually seen as being in decline. Yet, recently, the combination of new approaches, academic approaches of Islam, Islamic history particularly, and textual tradition, and more generous funding policy allowed new research projects and publications to emerge in recent years. This talk proposes thus an overview of these dynamics and contemporary trends. And of course, everybody has known since at least Edouard Said's Orientalism 1978 and not 1971, sorry, 79, sorry about that, that many of the first European scholars of Islam were more or less involved for historical and political reasons in cultural and sometimes even political aspects of the colonial project. Yet, those who misread Edouard Said or did not read Said entirely forget that he kind of saves several Orientalists or European Islamic scholars, such as, for instance, Louis Massignon, whom he defines as a tireless fighter on behalf of Muslim civilization, or Jacques Berck and Maxime Rodinson. Sorry, just quoting right here, just French, but I will quote then other nationalities. But what he says, what Said says about Jacques Berck and Rodinson is also interesting. They are credited by Said with a direct sensitivity to the material before them, and then a continual self-examination of their methodology and practice, a constant attempt to keep their work responsive to the material and not to a doctrinal preconception. So, contrary to what some would assert, each European study of Islam is not necessarily oriented, and particularly more than 50 years after the era Edouard Said is talking about. Well, just a few definitions of what we mean by Islamic studies or Islamology. We would use those words indifferently. 2016 report by Rachid Benzine, Catherine Mayer-Jaouen, and Mathilde Philippe Gay define as the textual and philological approach of the scriptural sources, Quran and Sunnah, and the sources of the first centuries of Islam. And they also add, it's not in the slide, but they also add that this approach is renewed at the international level by the contribution of new sources, addition of new manuscripts, papyrology, archaeology, and new methods, linguistics, for example, and enriched by human and social sciences. And there is other definition, but you can see it on the slide. What I didn't tell you is that at the very beginning of the slide, you have my email address, and you can ask me basically the PowerPoint presentation, because I will I put a lot of links right here, as you can see, so that will be easier for you to get to the source. But Islamic science or theology are not excluded from that research, and we will see it to begin with the famous German Zentrum für Islamische Theologie. To see, you know, how classical Islamic theology, Islamic studies, and even social and human sciences can interact together. So now I might be able to point the link with the mouse as someone showed me. There it is. So it's just to have a little just to have a little overview of the place. and tell you a few words about this German model. So those are, of course, theology centers. In 2010, the German state lenders established university and also German Islamic organization signed a convention to create 4 Zentrum für Islamische Theologie, following the recommendation of Professor Stefan Schreiner. And the German federal state support these centers with 40 million euro for the first 4 theological centers for a 5-year term from 2011 to 2015. So that's 2 million per center and per year. The funding was renewed in 2015, another 5 years until recently. So those centers are Tübingen, Münster, Osnabrück, Erlangen, and the fifth theological center opened recently in Berlin. After the first 5 years, the major German scholars issued positive evaluation of the centers and recommended to open and decompartmentalize the teachings to be able to be recognized as real theology department within faculties and play a more important intellectual role. So this is quite an interesting model. They now train theologian as well as school teacher, but also chaplains. And they have one BA, several BA basically, but one is followed by a 4-semester master entitled Islamic Theology in a European context. So you will have several traditional classical disciplines and more contemporary disciplines all together in this 4 semesters master. I'm not going to get into details, but you will be able to see it there. As I'm trained more as an anthropologist as an Islamic scholar, let me take the word of a professor there, Ruggero Vimercati Sanseverino, professor of Hadith and Prophetic Literature at Tübingen. He says that Zentrum für Islamische Theologie in Tübingen does not just pursue the teaching of traditional approaches such as memorization of the Quran, science of Hadith, etc., but tries more generally to make Islam rationally intelligible as a religious and spiritual orientation in a secular and pluralistic context. Still his words. It is therefore not to be conceived as a catechism telling students what to believe or not to believe, but rather, especially in the first semesters, to help them discover the complexity and dynamic character of what we call Islam, to teach them to distance themselves from their object of study without losing their confessional sensitivity, and to teach them to develop problems and questions, etc., etc. So I think this is quite an interesting approach, and Tübingen is one of the major center of Islamic theology in Germany and in Europe. Let me tell you a few words. Of course, if I'm talking about Germany, I can avoid talking about the Corpus Coranicum. You've probably heard about this major project. It is unique in Europe by its length. It has been funded for 17 years until 2024. So only two years remaining. To be very quick, so 3 main tasks of this project: to collect the oldest Quranic manuscripts and analyze the oral transmission as described by Muslim classical tradition, a database analysis of sources dating from the late antiquity, which may help us to reconstruct the religious environment of the first Muslim community in Western Arabia, and describing literary forms within the corpus Quranic revelation with reference to textual and contextual documentations. So, and then the Corpus Coranica, a French-German project, continued and extended and strengthened the Corpus Coranicum project. So major European scholars were involved in this this research project, ongoing research project, such as, for instance, the French archaeologist Christian Robin, quite well known here, I guess. François Desroches, who holds the chair on the history of the Quran at the Collège de France, and Angelica Neuvers, as I probably said. Oh no, I didn't say it before. And Sergio Noceda, who died a few years ago. So this is, of course, and I didn't click, but of course, if you ask me, then the PowerPoint, you will get to all the informations, and also the database I was really quickly talking about. In Italy, there is many things to say about Italy, but because there are many academic institutions dealing with Islamic tradition, such as L'Orientale, the University of Bologna, the famous Pontificio Istituto di Studi Islamici in Roma, the PISAI. I don't know if I mentioned the link here, but you will find easily their website. But I would like to stress more today the work of the Fondazione Internazionale Oasis, currently led by Professor Michele Brignone. The Oasis International Foundation is a private institution of Catholic inspiration, established in 2004 in Venezia by Cardinale Angelo Scuola, and since 2013 it has its headquarters in Milano. As expressed in its slogan, Christians and Muslims in the global world, its mission is to promote understanding between Christian and Muslims in the here and now of the post-1989 global world and its challenges. In that regard, Islamology, Islamic studies, occupies a central place within its activity. We might be able to mention just one recent program, not more, but they developed several interesting programs. For instance, the program on authority in Islam, who speaks for Muslims. So I'm just pointing out here. This is the front page, and here the page who will probably lead us to. Yeah, qui parle pour les musulmans. So this is in French, but here, as you can see, you can have it in English and Italian normally. So the quick is just you can have a look. Just for you can have a look. So several articles, as you can see, the Quran as a political program for certain movements, of course. A paper by Asma Asfaruddin, how the Shi'i clergy entered into politics, by Rainer Brunner, soft power from the Sufis, Wad al-Hakim. Very, very interesting research and issues. So, yeah, and as time is running, I'm not going to get more into details of those programs. Oasis continues its work, but the head of the Fondazione, Michele Brignone, recently told me that they are much less funded than during the Cardinale Scuola era, and currently trying to find external sources of funding to pursue their activities. So now let's now shift to another country, Belgium. We also have an interesting and long-term tradition in Islamic studies right now. Yeah, the CISMOC, right here. So, Centre interdisciplinaire d'études de l'islam dans le monde contemporain, Interdisciplinary Center for the Study of Islam in the Contemporary World. The articulation of the academic and theological approaches has been particularly developed at the Catholic University in Leuven, and in particular at the CISMOC, founded exactly 20 years ago. They assume cross-fertilization, particularly in the field of research on Muslim thought and ethics. This idea to articulate human and social sciences to an applied Islamology or Islamic studies has emerged in Belgium, particularly with the lead of prolific professor Felice D'Aceto. Now, the two leads of this dynamics are Brigitte Maréchal, a sociologist of Islam in Europe, and Abdesamad Belhaj, a Belgian Moroccan professor of Islamic studies, notably interested in Islamic reformist thought. So since 2000 and that I'm not going to click because it will require a lot of time, but yeah, since 2006, after having carried out a research on the training offer in Islamic sciences, CISMOC has taken the initiative or contributed to 4 projects related to Islamic studies at Leuven. 1, an annual training program, still ongoing. 2, an interdisciplinary interfaculty master's degree in religious sciences, housed in the Faculty of Theology. 3rd, a certificate in didactics of Islamic religion in the same faculty, specifically for school teachers. And 4th, the research within the CISMOC on the sociology of Islamic discourses and Muslim thought. And so there is a lot of other focuses and programs, but yeah, I'm not going to be able to get more into details. What is also interesting regarding Belgium is that this institute which has recently opened right here. I'm gonna have a little click because the Institut, l'Institut de promotion pour les formations sur l'islam. So it has been created in a nutshell, in a few words, in 2016. It aims at developing the training and transmission of knowledge on Islam within higher education in the Walloon Brussels Federation, with a clear stance to promote an Islam from Belgium and for Belgium, notably imam training, but not exclusively. The context seems clearly to be the 2016 bombings attacks in Brussels, and also the unadapted Islamic education in some part, they found in some part of this territory. And this institute is run by the Belgian Algerian Islamic scholar Radwan Atiya. Also very interesting platforms and programs. Of course, we have to, if we deal with Islamic studies, we have to talk about Great Britain. Everybody knows School of Oriental and African Studies, the Islamic department at Oxford, I think, which ex-Secretary General Saud Sahran holds a PhD from, and Cambridge, major institutions. So as time is counted, I will focus on just on a fascinating program from a less-known university, the last volume of which has been published recently, and concerns, of course, major questions. This project, so entitled Legitimate and Illegitimate Violence in Islamic Thought, so the Leave It program. The project had been run by Robert Gleave, a professor at Exeter and specialist of Shiism, and a young PhD in Islamic Studies, Istvan Kristo Nagy, a Hungarian scholar, whose PhD was on Ibn Muqaffa and the question of tolerance and violence in medieval Islam. So the project has been funded by different institutions, but notably state-funded RC UK Global Uncertainties Program. Let me just click on the first. So they had 3 publications, one in 2015, one in the issued, sorry, 3 publications, 2015, 2018, and 2022. So a recent one, just to have a look. Yeah, so that's the first volume, okay? The first volume has been published in 2015. Contrary to what the title of the book suggests, do not forget that the name of the program is Legitimate and Illegitimate Violence. So the religious arguments to dismiss or deconstruct violence in specific contexts are also part of the picture. And the abstract, you will find it there, and as you see, several specialists of different questions. And what I really like in this program is the periodicization of the program, but I'm going to get back to my own slide. Yeah, the second volume, same issue, but from the Mongols to European imperialism. Right here, you can access the PDF introduction. So that was the 2018 volume. And let me go back to the last one right here. I'm not going to click on it. It's not necessary. Third issue has just been published. So from European imperialism to post-colonial era. And here in this volume, of course, in this last volume, Al-Qaeda and Daesh are the so-called Daesh are the dominant case studies of the scholars. And they also hold several current research projects, notably one entitled Law and Learning in Imami Shi'i Islam, a 5-year project led which research fellow is Omar Anshasi, Raha Rafihi, Kumaila Rajani, so different young researchers. Okay, so the Netherlands. The Netherlands has a long and distinguished tradition in Islamic studies, notably in Leiden, where I had the chance to spend a few months. So there is great figures of Dutch Islamic studies, such as probably know Christian Snoek Groningen, 1857, 1936. The Saudi audience might know him for his 19th century photo. In the last slide that I prepared, I included the link. But those 19th century photos of the country were recently sold by Sotheby a few years ago. And of course, major figures such as Reinhard Dozy, who especially extensively wrote on Al-Andalus. But I wanted just to talk about a recent, very recent publication published in April 2022, many years of research of Dr. Martin van Putten, an historian of language and working on the Quranic Arabic and the linguistic history of Arabic and Berber. So he tries to uncovers the earliest linguistic layer of the Quran and aims at demonstrate that the text was composed in the Hijazi vernacular dialect, and that in the centuries that followed, different reciters started to classicize the text to a new linguistic ideal, the ideal of the Arabic. So of course, this is a work that is still discussed and big debate in the academic field. So let's shift without no transition to the rather cross-European project, the UQ and Interreligio. So a few words about the UQ project right now. There it is. The lead of the project is Professor John Tolan, professor for medieval Mediterranean history at the University of Nantes. He published extensively on the relation between Latin Europe and the Arab world in the Middle Ages. And one of his last books is entitled Muhammad the European, a history of representations of the Prophet in the West. Among the, I didn't list it right here, but so the project studies how the UQ project, how the European Quran was interpreted and adapted, used and formed in Christian European context, often in close interaction with the Islamic world, as well as with the Jewish population living in both Christian and Islamic regions. So among the various aspects this project study is the Quran, which Europeans brought, collected and copied. The Quran they translated and printed in Arabic and in translation, often using Muslim exegesis, tafsir, and Arabic grammars and dictionaries, and also the Qur'ans, which Muslim minorities living in the European Christian lands copied, interpreted, translated into local vernaculars, often in Arabic scripts. And then another cross-European, French, German, Swiss project involving the universities of Strasbourg, Heidelberg, and Tübingen. So kind of another way to, another method. This project so is led by a consortium, as you can see, of a university, and the offer of training in university theology and religious sciences is particularly diversified in this geographical area, Upper Rhine, which concentrate all the resources to meet the requirements of the Interreligio project for its head, Professor Francis Messner. So, for example, they will publish. So, they have, of course, this is not just research. They also elaborate masters and then teach in an interreligious fashion to students the result of their project. One example, I didn't link. It's been a long time. I didn't open a link, so I'm going to do it right now, so you can have a lot of information there. That's Professor Francis Messner. But for instance, I'm not sure I have the URL now, but the volume to be published by the University of Basel and Tübingen is entitled "The Methodology and Approach of the Founding Text." And the objective of this working group was to reflect on the creation of a comparative approach teaching methodology to the founding texts of Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, and Buddhist theology. This teaching will be integrated into, this is what I said, the master's program on interreligions, and will be offered as an optional module in the programs of partners faculties of theology and associates, and more broadly to all faculties or components that are interested. So I think this is quite, and they had their quite an interesting method and project. They had no, that's a UQ, basically a UQ, a recent colloquium in June, the Quran Inter-Christian Polemics. I'm not going to get back to that. And of course, let me finish with a few words on France, because a renewal of Islamic studies. A renewal of Islamic studies, yeah, that's the good slide, occurred since less than 10 years, let's say. First, to be noticed, then about 10 PhD in Islamic studies have been, or history, have been recruited in university or at CNRS, INALCO, and École Pratique des Hautes Études between 2016 and today. Still, this is still a few, but it helps to develop the field. So this is not related to these recruitments of researcher, but I wanted to begin by to mention that. But an ANR project, Agence Nationale de la Recherche, founded a few years ago a project on the presence of the Prophet in early and modern contemporary Islam. The lead project being Rashid Ashi. I'm not going to click into on this link, but this is a 2017-2021 project I think extended due to COVID. And they recently, in a few words, published a second volume entitled, I think the title is quite clear, Heirs of the Prophet, Authority and Power in Early Modern Contemporary Islam, Prophet Muhammad, Islam, Politics, Ottoman Empire, Wahhabism, Islamic Reformism, Colonialism, etc., etc. So how the figure of the Prophet was used and in those different historical and even theological contexts. The title is long and clear enough, so I'm not going to get into details and shift to the other program quite quickly. Also an INR program, Islamic Law in Morocco. Same period of time, how Islam was taught between 18th and 20th century in this important part of the production of Islamic world. Let me get back to my notes. Because of course Morocco has been during that period and even before an important center of Islamic knowledge. So their main contribution, and I don't think it's mentioned. Yes, it is. Their main contribution has just been published in the Revue d'études des mondes musulmans et de la Méditerranée review, edited by Sabrina Mervin, Sophie Bava, and Farid El-Asri. If you click, you see several contributions. You can access those contributions directly. Of course, most of which in French, but you have abstract in English and Arabic. Abdelwahid El-Sheikh on Sahara and so on and so forth. Another important research project and then publications, le Coran des historiens, edited by Guillaume D and Mohamed Ali Amir Moezi. Guillaume D from the Université Libre de Bruxelles, and Amir Moezi is a professor and director of research at the École pratique des hautes études en sciences sociales. The Quran of the historians has been published by Edition Cerf by the end of the 2019, and immediately became an editorial event in the fields of human sciences, Islamic studies, and theology, Quranic studies. More than 3,000 pages and three volumes. So I'm not gonna, I know. I have a booklet, but I need to get out of the, so it will not be possible to click on it. But I can provide the booklet for the people who would want it. But in a few words, I can say the content. I can give you a few words about the content of the content of the 3 volumes. A long volume 1 is a long introduction of more than 1,000 pages on the context of Arabia in the 6th and 7th century, and all that was going around it at the same time among Persians, the Byzantines, Ethiopians, and also Judaism among the Zoroastrian, the Manichaeans, etc., etc. The juridical situation of the region, the data of archaeology, epigraphy. It compares basically the different sacred corpuses and borrowings between each other, what we call intertextuality, what Islamic scholars call intertextuality. Volume 2, 2A and 2B, that's the historical, philological, and commentary of the entire Quran, surah by surah. Which is first in the at least in the academic field, this is the first time. There has not been a synthesis of this magnitude since the 19th century, written by scholars, not talking about, of course, a Muslim theologian. So this is sort of a secular tafsir, if I may, that they are involving it in this second volume. Volume 3 is an important bibliographical work by Paul Neuenkirchen, out of the box, out of the book, I mean physically, in an updated website. So important bibliographical work by Paul Neuenkirchen, a PhD student of Professor Amir Moezi, where he continuously collects all the studies on the Quran and Quranic characters since the 19th century. So, and then you'll have some, I'm not going to, but there is a lot of talk of Guillaume D and Mehdi, not Mehdi Hazayan, that's the website of Mehdi Hazayan, and you have a long talk, long presentation of Professor Amir Moezi to introduce this work. Right. So I may conclude by several other projects, still French project. Of course, there is a lot more to say about this 3,000 pages research, but you know, and Professor Amir Moezi, I'm not telling this to challenge Saudi ulema, but recently told me that the book, The Quran of the Historian, is discussed among the clergy, the clerics in Qom, Iran. So let's see what they will think about this work. And then I just wanted to finish by something like that: 6 French institutions to support research and spread more broadly academic knowledge on Islam. Spreading more broadly academic knowledge on Islam in French society, in French language mainly. Of course, a well-known institution, the GIS, Groupement d'intérêt scientifique Moyen-Orient, Monde musulman, so Middle East Muslim world, is a large platform which notably gathered each 2 years most of the specialists on the Muslim world from French institutions, French research institutions or teaching institutions. They found PhDs and are currently in the process of writing introductory books on Islam. Also, ISME-HESS, which has a lot of resources, but they recently involved in a more pedagogic and I say they seem to want to reach another larger public than the academic. So they launched this program. It's also a platform. I'm not gonna. You have some presentation here, but they have this program since a little bit more than 1 year. Abécédaire de l'Islam, right? With words that has been largely debated in French and even other European societies those last years, and they invite academics to talk about, for instance, caliphate, and you will see 3 academics in that talk about this issue, contextualizing
Muhammad,
depending on their background, history, theology.
Dans l'islam, le califat désigne un régime politique dans lequel la souveraineté est exercée par un calife. On trouve le terme khalifa dès l'époque des premières décennies de l'islam dans des papyrus trouvés en Égypte dans lesquels il désigne le lieutenant d'une personnalité politique ou militaire en poste.
So that's
la Crimée au profit.
Classical aspects, and then the historian Anne-Laure Dupont is putting it into the different basically occurrence in Islamic history of the notion of caliphate, and then Pierre-Jean Luizard also talking about the issue from his more contemporary perspective. So very interesting program. The ISME-HESS has been founded in 1999, notably through the influence of Jacques Berg. So still founding research also like GISMOM, etc. There is other, of course, different other programs. And for instance, I wanted to say a few words to finish with about those 2 years training on Islamic studies launched just a year ago at both INALCO and École pratique des hautes études. DU is diplôme universitaire, so it's not a master degree. It's a 1 or 2 year program to be trained on the basic understanding of Islam. For instance, if you click on INALCO diplôme universitaire, you can see here pedagogical objectives, the teachers, and here 4 semesters with 16 different courses from classical, medieval Islam to contemporary and anthropology of Islam. So that's a new offer in the French academic field for students who want to complete their degree, for imams also, French imams, and so on and so forth. And École pratique des hautes études launched its own at the same time. There is some kind between those institutions. There could be some mimetic rivalry, but I think this is good for knowledge. And to almost finish with, no, sorry. Yeah. A newborn, the Institut Français d'Islamologie, who has been announced by the president, I think around March 2020. Their website is not yet online, but so the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation and 8 partners institutions, the mission of the French Institute of Islamology, say that they will develop a high-level French Islamic studies and to promote on a national scale the scientific study of the systems of beliefs, knowledge and practices specific to the different branches that make up the Muslim religion. So Islamic studies is thus defined in this institute here both by its objects, the study of the Muslim religion in the past and the present, and by its scientific approach. And the study of the texts and discourses, practices and institutions of Islam forms its core, and a study for which the contribution of philological, linguistic, literary, philosophical, historical and legal and social science disciplines cannot be neglected. So to fulfill this mission, they will design a research program, call for projects, recently online, on Islamic studies, 2-year postdoctoral fellowship to 4 researchers, etc., etc. So I'm not gonna click, but yeah, if I click, then you access to the call for, of course, in French, the call for project for those different programs. And all that, you know, between 2000 and at least the 3, 4, and 5, between 2021 and 2022. And I also, but I'm not going to get much into details. I also had the chance to launch a fund, the Islam, Religion and Society Fund, to the Central Office for Religious Affairs. So between 2015 and 2029, I run this fund, and more than 30 research has been founded in 4 years and still continues. Among those 30 research during this period, in 2015, 2019, 5 could be classified as Islamic studies, the rest for human and social sciences of contemporary Islam. One example, we issued a call for project on Ibn Taymiyyah and Anbalism on French-speaking internet, which was, I think, a quite interesting project gained by the University of Marseille, because it implies multiple dimensions, multiple disciplines: Islamic studies, linguistic and media studies, specialists of classical Anbalism, but also specialists of contemporary Salafism in France, etc., etc. So there was that kind of project has been run during 2 years, and a report has been published. So sorry, I did quite quickly, but and it was not that much possible to get into details. But to conclude, I will conclude with some words, notably the Professor Amir Moezi, one of the two editors of the Quran of the historians, say that the historical and philological methods are at the forefront of the major discoveries in Islamic studies those last years. That the scholar might develop complex tools to answer simple questions: when, history; where, geography; and who, which milieu, culture, and society produced or received which kind of texts. Another key tool to continue to develop is intertextuality, the correspondence between Christian, Jewish, Islamic, and Persian texts. So, to conclude, Islamic studies, Islamology, and theology, whether classical or reformist, there exists a real diversity in terms of approaches and sensibilities, which allows, I think, a large choice of partnerships with European research institutions, for King Faisal Center for Research and Islamic Studies, if there is a will to work together from both sides, and I hope so. In addition, I'm also pretty sure that among those researchers and research programs, a lot might also be interested in the King Faisal Center, a wonderful manuscripts collection that I had the chance to discover yesterday with the ambassador. So now, tafaddar, I would say, and let's go ahead for more European Saudi collaboration and cooperation on those kind of research programs.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cedric. I'm afraid I think we've run out of time. I was going to open the floor to some questions, but unfortunately our time is up. However, I think if anybody does have any questions, or indeed to reiterate what Dr. Cedric said about the PowerPoint slide, if you would like to have that, then you can either email Dr. Cedric directly, or you can email us here at the center. Sorry? Oh, it's okay to continue? Yes, sure. Okay, sure. So if we have a couple of questions, we could maybe put the questions together. Yes, Dr. Abdullah.
Sorry, I didn't put the concluding remarks when telling the concluding remarks, but they are right there. So it's for that.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been a very informative discussion. My name is Abdullah Hamiduddin. I'm a researcher at the center. So, as you mentioned, there is a lot of diversity in the centers you mentioned in terms of their approach, and maybe also the degree of scholarly focus on Islam versus Islamic societies. The question I had is, to what degree could we contextualize all these projects within the identity issues in Europe? I mean, how do they engage within that tension? For example, you mentioned the project of the Belgian project. Mm-hmm. It was related to, at least you mentioned something about it in the context of the terrorist attack that happened in 2016.
Mhm.
And then the last example you mentioned, what's it called? The French Institute for Islamology. And I think it comes in the context of Macron's call for a French Islam. And then you have other identity issues and Europe with Islam, Europe within itself. How could one contextualize the agendas of these various projects within that?
Yeah, that's clearly in that kind of context that those institutes or research projects were launched. In the French case, I would say that there was, back in 2014, academic reports, to stress on the lack of Arab-speaking scholars and the lack of Islamic studies in French university. Report from Catherine Mayer-Jaouen and one other report. So it's larger than the political and cultural context. But I mean, once those institutes or research programs are not and cannot be ruled by politicians, which is something, of course, totally excluded, and so we just have to trust into the head of those programs. They were claiming funds for their research even before this political context, or what you call the identity issues. And then they get some funds and they are running their own program on the issues that we saw. So I say that, yes, the context is not totally independent. And even if sometimes it is related to a conflicted context, then it's a chance. It became a chance for research and the growth of religion, and particularly the knowledge of Islam, the growth of knowledge of Islam in France and Europe.
Any further questions from anyone? Yes, I have just one here.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Balak, for this interesting presentation about the developments happening in Europe. I myself, coming from Germany, seeing the developments happening in Germany in the inter-religious dialogue and also with the political Islam merging into the politics in Germany, we see that there's a difficulty to really live as a Muslim in Germany, meaning you need to align your Islamic identity with the German constitution. Now, you've been talking about the trends happening in Europe, which are really inspiring, but can you tell us more about the challenges?
What do you mean by to align your Muslim identity to German constitution? I'm interested in that.
So basically, you cannot just follow your beliefs clearly as stated, the moral foundations of your belief, but you need to align your understanding in a kind of, let's say, belief in freedom, belief in diversity, belief in, now in Germany, speaking about different ideologies on the world. And you need to have a certain kind of, not only respect, but tolerance, which goes further. For example, in Berlin, you can say that there's a liberal Islamic branch where female and male pray together. Even female imams are wanted to be being basically the imams and praying and so on. So these are challenges that I'm referring to.
Well, I will answer as an anthropologist, because there is one doctrine, but as you know, multiple expression of Islam, and of course, European countries happen to want the international context to have less impacts on their Muslim communities. For instance, in Germany, the Diyanet, the Turkish the Turkish Ministry of Religious Affairs has quite an important power there, and it became complicated. It became a complicated issue for the German government and lenders, because they didn't want their German citizens or Turkish German citizens to be treated as Turkish issues and Turkish subject by the Diyanet. So I would say that this is the ongoing process of nationalization process of Islam, but which happened basically in Muslim majority countries. For instance, I mean, there is a Moroccan kind of Islam, right? Islam Rahid. There is one doctrine, but Islam in Morocco is officially defined as Maliki, Ash'ari, and Tasawwuf, and a particular Tasawwuf from Junaid, the Ministry of Religious Affairs several times. He mentioned this formula. So, I mean, if some countries, some Muslim majority countries, are looking for that kind of nationalization, then I think, and because of what is the European and what was the European context in terms of Islam, and then they want to, and this is the case also in France, for instance. There was a lot of imam détaché. I don't know how to translate that into English, from Morocco, from Turkey, and from Algeria. And the French government wants to have less imam détaché, less imam trained in foreign countries, and more trained in France. It's just facts that I'm saying, but yeah, this is an ongoing process in Europe. But I think in Muslim majorities country also, who do not want certain other particular movements to involve in their religious field.
Thank you, Dr. Cedric. Any more questions from anybody? Well, if you'd like to join me in thanking Dr. Cedric for his insightful presentation. And just to reiterate what Dr. Cedric said before, if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint so that you can access these links and the information that was provided, either email him directly or indeed email us at KFChris, and we will send this to you. Thank you once again, Dr. Cedric. Thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the presentation. Was I too?